What's going on? It's your boy, the voice of reason, and allow me to get in my zone. All right, so what I'm going to talk about today is Andy Reid basically confirming that Kingsley Suamataia and Mike Caliendo are in a competition for the starting left guard spot. And this is for anyone that's been, paying attention. You already saw this coming. And so what I want to do is kind of talk about that because the feedback from the Kingdom was insane. Just a lot of, fans were upset, not understanding, and I think some things need to be really, really understood. Is that first of all, in drafting Kingsley, you already had a player that was developmental. It was already thought from jump that he could either be a tackle or guard. There were some experts that felt like he would definitely be, a better guard. So, the Chiefs, first of all, didn't give him enough of a sample size. You know what I mean? One of the things I don't like about sports is that, when it came to Eric Fisher, since he was the number one overall pick, he got a million opportunities. And there were games he looked way worse than Kingsley, if you remember his tenure, but he was given the opportunity to develop. Kingsley was pulled after 2 games when the first game was against the Ravens, whose defense had the second most sacks in the league and, has a bunch of Pro Bowls and all pros on that D-line. And then the second game, you're going against Trey Hendrickson. Here's a guy that had 17 and a half sacks last year and led the league with 17 and a half sacks this year. Trey Hendrickson went against the Pro Bowler and Andrew Thomas with the Giants and had 2 sacks against him and another QB hit. So the thing about it was I felt like it was very unfair, especially for the type of offense that was called, all those different factors, to not give Kingsley the opportunity to grow. But one benefit that came from that is Kingsley was one of the most athletic tackles in the draft. Now Kingsley instantly, literally becomes the most athletic guard in the NFL by numbers. And so it's an exciting prospect because of what he did week 18 against the Broncos. You gotta understand, this is the team in the Broncos that was still in the playoff hunt. This was win or go home. So this was like a playoff game for them. And in Kingsley's first start at guard, with a tackle he wasn't used to, and going against a defense that led the league in sacks, going against a defensive tackle in Zach Allen that's quietly one of the best in the league, Kingsley was able to go ahead and have 25 snaps as far as passing and gave up 1 pressure in those 24-25 snaps. Like, absolutely awesome. What he was able to do. And that was very promising for the Chiefs. And that was enough for them to say, you know what, we're going to give him an opportunity. Because what I want people in the Kingdom to understand is that you don't have to think about Kingsley replacing the future Hall of Famer, in my opinion, Joe Thuney, who I greatly miss, and it's a sad thing that he left. The thing about it is, he has to replace a 7th round draft pick. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, when the Chiefs won Super Bowl 58, that postseason by numbers was the hardest postseason any other team had to endure. But yet, the majority of the games in that postseason weren't played by All-Pro, All-World, future Hall of Famer Joe Thuney. The majority of those games were played by 7th round draft pick Nick Allegretti, right? And so Nick Allegretti, for the majority of the Bills game, the entirety of the Ravens game against the number 1 defense that year, historic defense, number 1 in sacks, all that. And then a top 4 defense in the Super Bowl with the 49ers, with one of the best front lines in the league. Nick Allegretti was in for those games. And Nick Allegretti was not all world, but he was a solid player. But you know what was happening on the left side? Solid play. Not all world play from Donovan Smith. He was actually terrible in the regular season, battling some injuries though, but in the postseason he was solid. See, it's better to have 2 solid pieces at left guard and left tackle than it is to have an all-world left guard but then a terrible situation at tackle, which is what plagued them. So the question isn't, can Kingsley play to the level of a Joe Thuney? The question is, can he play to a Nick Allegretti's level? And I believe the answer is yes. Guys, Jalen Moore doesn't need to play to a Willie Roaf level, okay? Can he play to a Donovan Smith level, right? And if they can both play to at least those levels, then this team has a chance to win a Super Bowl. if they play beyond those levels, this team is definitely winning the Super Bowl. So I believe you're looking at a future Pro Bowler or all Pro guard. You heard it here first. So just wanted to share that information, of course, with the kingdom. With that being said, you all have an unbelievable day just because.